Hello there, I am Nadia Azmi and you are watching Nightline. The top stories. Minimum wage postponed to July 2023 for employers with less than 5 workers. And cost of living solutions expected to be implemented next year. The implementation of the minimum wage order for employers with less than 5 workers has been postponed again from January 1st to July 1st next year. Human Resources Minister V. Sivakumar said the decision was made after taking into account the views of the many stakeholders who may be affected by financial and economic uncertainties next year. In a statement on Tuesday, Sivakumar said the 6-month extended postponement was hoped to give the group, including small and medium enterprises, the opportunity to coordinate and balance their financial needs. He also reminded employers who are not involved in the postponement to continue complying with the law. The Minimum Wage Order 2022 came into effect on May 1st, with the minimum wage of 1,500 ringgit per month for employers with 5 or more workers in all sectors, regardless of regions. This includes employers carrying out professional activities under the Malaysia Standard Classification of Occupation (MASCO). However, employers with less than 5 workers were initially granted a deferment until January 1st. The Malaysian Employers Federation, MEF, on Tuesday hailed the government's decision to again postpone the implementation of the 1,500 ringgit minimum wage for companies employing fewer than 5 workers. Its president, Datuk Syed Hussein Syed Husman, said this would allow micro, small and medium enterprises, SMEs, to balance their books. In a statement on Tuesday, he said that the postponement was especially so in view of the economic challenges expected next year. Datuk Syed Hussein pointed out the deferment would also provide such companies time to build their businesses and cash flow to keep afloat. He also said that no employer wants to lose their experienced employees, as too much time and investment have been placed in them to grow their skills and expand their knowledge. He was also grateful that the Human Resources Ministry had listened to business requirements, adding that keeping more businesses alive would create more employment. The Minimum Wage Order 2022 came into effect across all sectors on May 1st this year. However, an exemption until December 31st was given to employers who employed fewer than 5 workers. Meanwhile, Malaysian Trades Union Congress MTUC President Muhammad Effendi Abdul Ghani has expressed shock and disappointment over the government's decision to again defer the implementation of the 1,500 ringgit minimum wage rule for small companies. He said the government should have gone ahead with the measure on January 1st as promised and opened applications for minimum wage subsidies for companies struggling with higher wage bills.
For the MTC view, we think that this really demoralized the workers B40 because especially it's happening on discriminations on the workers in our country, because we have divided by 2 minimum salary in our country. And furthermore, the implementation of minimum wages already differ for 8 months. It means that the employer are really know about the implementation on 1st January 2023, and they are giving more space to the employer to get ready to implement the minimum wage in our country.
Muhammad Effendi also urged the government to reconsider the move as soon as possible to ensure the welfare of workers, especially those from the B40 group who are struggling with the rising cost of living. The Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Ministry, KPDN, and the Economy Ministry are refining several quick solutions to tackle the cost of living issue, which is expected to be implemented by end of January next year. Its ministers, Datuk Sri Salahuddin Ayub and Rafizi Ramli, said in a joint statement on Tuesday that it will include a cross-ministry cooperation action plan. According to both ministers, the KPDN and the Economy Ministry have agreed to create a joint secretariat that will be the platform at the official level to discuss the roles of various agencies in tackling the cost of living issue. They also reiterated that the government remained committed to help Malaysians tackle the issue, but there was a need to ensure that every step taken would not affect the business and industrial ecosystem that are still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. The statement also read that efforts to control inflation and rising costs of living needed the cooperation of all parties concerned in the value chain, including the government, as this issue not only relates to low prices, but also fair prices to manufacturers, businesses and consumers. The government also has taken several long-term and short-term measures to tackle the cost of living issue, including maintaining the electric tariff for domestic, commercial and industrial consumers, as well as price controls and subsidies for chicken and eggs for a certain set period. The public was also advised to strengthen their role as smart consumers by planning expenses and adjusting inclinations, especially towards alternative products to items that have increased in price, making price comparisons using the Price Catcher app, as well as buying in quantities needed and not succumbing to panic buying. Police investigations into the landslide tragedy at the Father's Organic Farm campsite near Batangkali, Selangor are now almost 90% complete. State Police Chief Dato' Arjunaidi Muhammad said once the probe has been concluded, the investigation paper would be submitted to the Deputy Public Prosecutor for the next course of action. According to Dato' Arjunaidi, investigations now only involve examination of the crime scene, recordings of conversations between rescue team personnel and pathology reports from the hospital to find out the cause of death of the victims involved. He added so far, authorities have taken statements from 77 witnesses, including the campsite operators and workers.
77 ni sama ada daripada keluarga dia, daripada polis yang menerima maklumat pertama yang mula-mula sampai tempat kejadian, juga daripada pasukan-pasukan penyelamat yang mula-mula hadir di tempat kejadian, keluarga mangsa yang meninggal, mangsa yang selamat dan semualah.
Dato' Arjunaidi told this to reporters after the training completion and commissioning certificates presentation ceremony to Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia Volunteer Police Corps in Bangi on Tuesday. He added that the investigation paper was opened under sections 304(a) and 290 of the Penal Code and the Local Government Act. He also said the police had traced as many as 20 vehicles buried in the incident and efforts were being done to identify the owners of the vehicles. The early morning incident on December 16th claimed the lives of 31 out of the 92 people involved. Among the dead, 18 were adults and 13 were children, including a 1-year-old baby. The Health Ministry, MOH, will continue to step up its preparedness to face a possible hike in the number of daily COVID-19 cases and deaths following the surge of infections in China. Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said among the measures to be taken was to increase the percentage of booster dose uptake to reduce the severity of infections and the risk of death. In a statement on Tuesday, Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham said that MOH urged all eligible individuals to take their booster dose so that the Malaysian population gets optimal protection against COVID-19. The ministry will also strengthen the country's COVID-19 management by improving the automated find, test, trace, isolate and support FTTIS approach and ensuring all COVID-19 assessment centres, CAC, are ready to receive a high number of patients. He added that the MOH had also introduced the use of the antiviral drug Paxlovid to the COVID-19 clinical care pathway since April 15th to treat patients with mild to moderate symptoms or categories 2 and 3 with priority given to high-risk patients. The ministry would also monitor the spread of COVID-19 in the community through the implementation of surveillance activities involving sentinel locations of influenza-like illness and severe acute respiratory infection nationwide.
Paparan sepanjang tahun 2022, gelombang iklim dan tragedi, transformasi landscape politik,
sesungguhnya bersumpah,
kemelut ekonomi global. Basan 2022, Sabtu 5.30 petang di TV3.
The flood situation in Perak, Kelantan and Sarawak continues to improve on Monday night. In Sabah and Terengganu, however, the situation remains unchanged as of 10 p.m. Currently, there are 268 flood evacuees in 5 states. According to Kelantan Disaster Management Committee Secretariat, the number of flood victims in the state decreased to 31 people from 209 earlier in the evening. All of them are being housed in 2 relief centres in Pasir Mas. As for Sarawak, the number of flood evacuees dropped to only 7 people at 1 relief centre in Serian. In Perak, the number of evacuees in Hilir Perak dropped slightly to 42 people from 50 people. In Sabah, the number of evacuees in Kota Belud remained at 135 people, while in Terengganu there are still 53 people placed at 2 relief centres in Besut and Sutiu. The Malaysia Meteorological Department, Met Malaysia, has issued a strong winds and rough seas warning in the waters of Sarawak, Sabah and Labuan until January 3rd next year. It said that the second category warning involved strong northwesterly winds of 40 to 50 kilometres per hour, with wave height up to 3.5 metres expected over the waters of Sarawak, Western Sabah and Labuan. In a statement issued on Tuesday, Met Malaysia said a Category 1 warning was also issued involving strong winds at a speed of between 40 to 50 kilometres per hour, with waves reaching 3.5 metres, which is expected to occur in the waters of East Johor, Pahang, Terengganu and Kelantan. The warning involved areas in the waters of Tioman and South Bunguran and is dangerous to small crafts and sea recreational activities. Floods due to the northeast monsoon season this year have caused more people to be evacuated than usual. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Sabah Sarawak Affairs and Special Functions, Dato' Armizan Muhammad Ali, said that within the space of a month, the number of evacuees has reached over 121,000, or 67% of the total affected residents for the whole monsoon season last year. According to Dato' Armizan, the National Disaster Management Agency NADMA is currently carrying out round-the-clock monitoring during this northeast monsoon season since it began in November until March next year. He added that the Malaysian Meteorological Department, Met Malaysia, had also forecast bad weather conditions could continue until the end of the year. He said this to the media after visiting victims of the king tide phenomenon, which destroyed 108 houses in Kampung Forest, Sandakan. Dato' Armizan also said 4 types of assistance from the government will be considered for the victims.
Pertamanya adalah bantuan wang ihsan RM1,000 yang disalurkan kepada KIR, Ketua Isi Rumah. Ini akan dapat disalurkan pada kadar segera sebaik saja NADMA menerima maklumat dan juga data daripada Jawatankuasa Pengurusan Bencana Daerah.
He also said that they were looking at other measures that can be taken to assist the victims, including whether they can be allowed to stay longer at the temporary relief centre. A total of 705 people have been placed at the relief centre at Sekolah Menengah Sungai Anip 2. They were made homeless after waves destroyed the stilt houses in the water village during the king tide phenomenon since Saturday night. The remaining Kampung Sungai Baru residents who will have to vacate their houses to make way for the redevelopment of the Malay enclave in the heart of the federal capital should be given 6 months to find new homes. Titi Wangsa Member of Parliament Datuk Seri Johari Abdul Ghani urged the residents who needed more time to move out to submit a letter to the Lands and Mines Department as well as the developer to appeal for a grace period.
Saya merasakan bahawa masa yang mestilah diberi masa sekurang-kurangnya 6 bulan untuk mereka berpindah, untuk mencari rumah untuk mereka tinggal. Kerana pemaju pun membayar mereka ni agak lambat. Sekarang ni bila dia baru bayar, lepas tu minta mereka pindah masa 30 hari, mana boleh. Jadi sekurang-kurangnya dia kena beri sekurang-kurangnya 6 bulan lah untuk berpindah. Isu ni sebenarnya berpunca daripada tidak ada koordinasi di antara pemaju, wakil rakyat dan juga Kementerian Wilayah.
Dato' Seri Johari said this when responding to reports that the remaining group of Kampung Sungai Baru residents that oppose the proposed redevelopment project have been told to vacate their homes by the middle of January. He assured that he would support every application made by the remaining residents. He also said he had met with the Kuala Lumpur mayor to help those who had yet to find new homes to be placed temporarily in units owned by City Hall. The Titi Wangsa MP added that his office would appoint a lawyer to represent the 90% of residents who had moved out to ensure that they would receive the new units. He pointed out that residents who had been compensated by the developers should also be offered new units if they expressed interest in the homes once the housing project was completed. Tensions soar in northern Kosovo as local Serbs block roads. All this and more after this breather. We're back with news from the foreign front. Protesting Serbs in the ethnically divided city of Mitrovica in northern Kosovo erected new barricades on Tuesday, hours after Serbia said it had put its army on the highest combat alert following weeks of escalating tensions between Belgrade and Pristina. It was reported that Serbs blocked the road access linking the Serb majority part with the Albanian majority part by parking trucks and heavy machinery. Since December 10th, Serbs in northern Kosovo have erected multiple roadblocks in and around Mitrovica and exchanged fire with police after the arrest of a former Serb policeman for allegedly assaulting serving police officers during a previous protest. It was understood that around 50,000 Serbs living in the northern part of Albanian majority Kosovo refused to recognize the Pristina as the government of the state. Kosovo, in the meantime, said it cannot engage in dialogue with criminal gangs, adding that freedom of movement should be restored. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, on Tuesday urged countries to help Rohingya Muslims stranded at sea, as at least 20 reportedly died and hundreds more landed in Indonesia after weeks adrift in the Indian Ocean. According to the international organization, nearly 500 Rohingya have reached Indonesia in the past 6 weeks, and many others did not act despite numerous pleas and appeals for help. It said 2022 could be one of the deadliest years at sea in almost a decade for the Rohingya, with a number of growing of them fleeing desperate conditions in refugee camps in Bangladesh. On Monday, a boat washed ashore in Indonesia's Aceh province, carrying 174 Rohingya, which most of them were found severely dehydrated, fatigued and in need of urgent medical care after weeks at sea. In another development, South Korea's former president Lee Myung-bak has received a presidential pardon, cutting short his 17-year prison sentence for corruption. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol issued the pardon for Lee on Tuesday as part of mass pardons that are common in the East Asian country around national holidays. The pardon, effective on Wednesday, will cancel the remaining 15 years of his jail term. The 81-year-old has been serving a 17-year sentence for corruption, embezzlement and bribery since 2018, though he has often been released temporarily for medical treatment. China will scrap quarantine for travellers from January 8th, marking the last major shift from the country's zero-COVID policy. According to China's National Health Commission, travellers would only need a PCR test taken 48 hours pre-flight to enter the country. The country's management of COVID-19 will also be downgraded to the less strict Category B from the current top-level Category A, as the disease has become less virulent and will gradually evolve into a common respiratory infection.
The announcement is the latest move by Beijing to loosen its zero-COVID regime after it abruptly dropped mandatory testing and lockdowns earlier this month. Low temperatures and fog in New Delhi hit air and rail movement on Tuesday as a cold wave gripped the Indian capital, with minimum temperatures dipping as low as 5.6 degrees Celsius. According to the India Meteorological Department, dense and very dense fog was likely to continue over some parts of the city over the next 24 hours due to light wind and high moisture levels. With visibility of just 50 meters in some areas, cold wave conditions were also forecasted in the northwest states of Punjab, Haryana and Delhi during the next 2 days. A cold wave is declared in the plains of India when the minimum temperature dips to 4 degrees Celsius or falls 4.5 degrees Celsius below normal to 10 degrees Celsius or below. Welcome back. On to sports now. Vietnam beat Malaysia 3-0 in their 2022 AFF Cup Group B match at the My Dinh National Stadium in Vietnam Tuesday night that saw both sides end the game with 10 men.
Nguyen Tiên Linh headed Vietnam in front in the 28th minute. But the home side went a man short 4 minutes later as Nguyen Van Tuan saw a second yellow card for a late challenge. The hosts doubled their lead in the 60th minute through Khu Ngoc Hai from the penalty spot after an off-the-ball incident saw Azam Azmi shown a straight red card before Nguyen Van Tuan sealed the win in the 83rd minute. Malaysia need to beat Singapore in their final Group B match on January 3rd at the Bukit Jalil National Stadium to be assured of a place in the last four.
Earlier, four-time champions Singapore had to work hard to defeat a resilient Laos 2-0 in their second outing in Group B of the AFF Championships 2022 at the National Stadium KM16 on Tuesday.
Laos were forced to make a last-minute change before kick-off as goalkeeper Funin Sayason picked up an injury during the warm-up, so in came Kyo Odon Sovana Sangso. A well-organised Laos side stifled the Singaporean attacks and were unfortunate not to score themselves in a neck-and-neck contest. But Irfan Fandi's header in the 32nd minute and a 94th minute strike from Shawal Anwar proved to be the difference between the two sides as Takayuki Nishigaya's players made it 2 wins from as many matches. The result means Singapore rank on the second of the group with 2 wins after 2 fixtures. And Michael Wise's Laos, sitting at the bottom of the group after 3 defeats and conceding 13 goals, will challenge Myanmar on Friday in Yangon.
After this short break, Karak Highway congested after 5 superbikes pile up. Welcome back. In Johor, police confirmed that there were new and old injuries found all over the body of a 4-year-old boy who allegedly died from physical abuse on Monday. State Police Chief Datuk Kamarul Zaman Mahmud said preliminary investigations revealed that the child who died at Sultan Ismail Hospital had serious injuries almost all over his body.
Kecederaan di beberapa tempat, ada kesan mungkin dipukul di belakang, ada dicosok sama ada api ataupun benda-benda yang panas di seluruh badan, termasuk di atas kemaluan dan sebagainya. Amat sedih.
The victim, who was the youngest of 11 siblings, was admitted to the hospital's intensive care unit ICU on December 23rd and pronounced dead at 6:40 p.m. on Monday. The boy, whose parents were jailed in September for a drug offence, was initially looked after by his third sister before she left him under her friend's care. Datuk Kamarul Zaman also said so far 5 individuals aged 15 to 37 had been arrested to assist in the investigations, including the victim's 19-year-old sister and her 37-year-old husband. They have been remanded for 7 days until December 31st. The case was initially investigated under the Child Act but has been reclassified under the Penal Code for murder.
A motorcyclist suffered burns after being involved in an accident involving 5 high-powered motorcycles on the Kuala Lumpur-Karak KLK highway near Gombak on Tuesday. Selangor Malaysian Fire and Rescue Department Director Datuk Nur Azam Khamis said his department received a call on the incident at around 1 p.m. He added that 6 firemen from the Selayang Fire and Rescue Department rushed to the scene. Upon arrival, they were informed of a fire involving a motorcycle which was completely burned due to the accident. It was understood that all 5 motorcyclists sustained serious injuries and have been taken to a hospital before the firemen arrived at the scene. The accident also caused an 8-kilometre traffic crawl along the highway heading to the federal capital. Pictures and video recordings of the accident also went viral on social media. Revellers hit the streets of Wigan wearing fancy dress outfits in a unique post-Christmas tradition. The tradition has been going for decades and no one is quite sure how it started, but everyone seems to love it. Let's take a look at the festival as we wrap up Nightline this time around. I'm Nadia Azmi. Thank you for watching and stay safe.